dogs. Have you ever thought about the logistics of taking your dog camping? Why not take your dogs camping? There's no dog sitters involved, there's no kennel boarding fees. It's a great idea, and let's face it, dogs make our camping trips so much more fun. Now we've got today on our show Valda and Ian.
Hello.
Now they love to camp in style, so we thought we would show you how this lovely couple camped with their two favourite fur babies, Charlie and Sizzle.
And Sizzle.
Now as you can see by Charlie and Sizzle, Charlie's a bit small, well, a little bit like Roland, but Sizzle is a cattle dog cross, and he's a big boy, beautiful nature. So we're going to have a chat to Valda and to Ian today, and we're going to find out how they do camping. Well, let's call it glamping, because it's a pretty glamorous motorhome they camp in. So Val, what made you decide to take your dogs camping?
Well, initially it was a last minute decision. We had thought we'd probably tow a trailer behind the motorhome to put the dogs in so they'd be safe from predators and so on. But our trip, the first trip, was a rushed one, so we just took the dogs along. The first night, one dog slept on the driver's seat and the other one slept on the passenger seat, and they didn't bark or want to go out during the night. So we thought, wow, this is easy.
Now you've got a beautiful big motorhome here, so how long was your motorhome? Do you know? Is it about
24 foot.
Yeah, so it's like a travelling lounge, if you like.
Yeah,
and so there's plenty of room for these two dogs as well.
But
So do you take their own beds with them?
we do, but when we first took them on our holiday, we had a Sprinter, which is very small.
Ah, about the size of an ambulance, isn't
Yes, yes. So we didn't have beds other than a rug, and now I don't take a bed for them. We only take a rug again because it's warm inside. This is very well insulated, so even though we've been coming through the cold, once they sit, Sizzle doesn't sit there, even though it's the bigger bed. Charlie does. He likes that because he stretches out. Sizzle curls up like a fox on the passenger seat, even though he's the bigger dog. But this one just likes to stretch out.
So do you think they're happier coming away with you, Ian, rather than going into a boarding kennel or staying home?
Absolutely, because there's no anxiety. That we don't create an anxiety for the dogs. So put you home away from home.
Yeah.
And yes, they are most happy, and they've adapted so well.
They're very adaptable, aren't they?
They
dogs?
are. They're just, it's amazing just how well they do adapt. And we open a door, they don't take off. And we rely on them, and they rely on us.
Now
It's a
they're great
partnership.
safety
Very,
strategies,
very
aren't
important.
they? So they
Very-
would bark if someone came towards the van,
Yes,
or
they certainly do.
when you're asleep they would wake you up.
Oh, definitely. The fire alarm went off the other day.
The fire alarm,
Smoke alarm.
The
And
smoke alarm
yeah.
went off, and this one really went off. You know, he had there been a fire in him, it was only the toaster.
You are such a smart dog.
Very smart.
So no, it is a very, very good partnership.
Well, that's awesome. Now, what about vaccinations? Here in Australia, we've got to have our dogs sorted out and vaccinated for heartworm. We also have to, interestingly, watch out for crocodiles and snakes and things in our country if we take our dogs out. So I think it's a great idea to have your dog sleeping in the van with you. I like that idea for their safety as well. Before you take your dog travelling, it's a great idea, depending on which country you live in, just to check what the requirements are for vaccinations. In Australia here we have heartworm, so our dogs are always vaccinated against heartworm or medicated for heartworm disease. We also have fleas and ticks, and we all know that ticks carry Lyme disease, which can be really debilitating for dogs and for humans. And also we're looking at rabies in some countries where you need the little vaccination date for the rabies. So make sure that when you do take your dog camping, you know the regulations and where you're going, the type of camping area you're going to. And try and have all the tags and information on your dog's collar. Of course, also making sure that you've got contact details on there. So is your dog microchipped? Is Sizzle microchipped?
Yes, both of them are microchipped.
Yeah, so
Most important.
So if they get lost in the bush, the microchip will tell the people who found them where to find you. And also on Roland's collar here, we've got his name and a mobile phone number, because we all travel with mobile phones now. So have you ever had a situation in the camper van where you've lost your dog?
No.
Because they always stay round?
They don't move very far
No,
at all.
no.
Although they're very intuitive. If we stop at 10 a.m. to have a cup of coffee, and they know we've stopped for a cup of coffee, even though haven't put the kettle on or done anything, they just hover. If we stop at 10 a.m. and we intend camping, they're off, and we haven't said anything.
Now, we've just been talking about ticks on dogs, and we know that apart from carrying nasty Lyme disease, they're just a horrible thing, and they attach themselves to your dog. If you've got a very furry dog like Roland, and also like little Charlie here, you've got places that you need to be checking your dog for ticks, and part of the check should be inside the ears, also under the gums here. They can line up under the gums and they can attach. At the back, underneath their tail. Am I patting Charlie?
Yes.
But Valda, you had a tick on Charlie just today, didn't you?
Yes, yesterday evening I brushed him because he'd been in the long grass and he was absolutely covered in seeds, and I had thought I had done a fantastic job. But then yesterday, later in the evening, as I was patting him, I thought I could feel something. This morning when I checked him, he actually had a tick embedded. Even though he has been treated and we have been diligent with the checking, somehow, and it was under the ear. I can actually show you where
Show us where it was. Good
because
idea.
I had brushed him with his collar on, but that brown mark is actually Dettol because I didn't know what else to do, but I just thought if I put Dettol on it, it might help the tick drop off, but it didn't make any difference. I ended up, after about an hour of bathing it in Dettol, just flicking it with the scissors. But he's had all the preventatives that we thought were necessary. However, he loves the long grass, and we're wondering if that's where he's getting them from. And I would have believed, because we've treated them to stop this from happening, that we would have been safe. So I don't think you can be too careful. Absolutely.
And maybe too, if that tick had just attached itself, it probably would have dropped off, because once it starts biting and sucking the blood, it must get the poison and it must drop off like a flea perhaps would too.
Yes.
Now, how important is it for your dogs to take special toys? I'm listening to Sizzle barking here, and he's barking because one of his favourite toys is being shown on camera. So Ian, what sort of toys do you pack for the dog to keep them entertained for Charlie and for Sizzle?
Valda goes along to the op shop, and Kitty's toys that have been discarded are in the op shop.
Oh, I do that too, the fluffy toys. He loves it.
He just
Roland loves it.
And he seems to this one here makes the squawking sound. This is one of his favourites, but he gets the other ones and he has a playtime. So he alternates between the two.
So you've got two very different dogs here. You've got Sizzle, who is, I call a cattle dog, but what actually is Sizzle?
Sizzle is a German Cooley Kelpie cross. Now Sizzle has got the Kelpie makeup of the head, although the Cooley markings, and the rest of the body is the Cooley, and he is very true to type in the sense of this bone structure, the formation of him, and he is a very well structured dog for him because he's smart. But these Coolies are very placid dogs in nature, very versatile, they're adaptable to nearly any situation, they socialise well, and which is most important, because that's
and we'd always take a leash and a collar so that they can be restrained if you need to, if you're around people.
Absolutely.
The cattle dog is a working dog, so that's why you need to keep them entertained. They've got lots of energy.
Yes, very energetic, and he needs to be, well, both actually. This one does keep up with the bigger dog, but they both demand a lot of exercise.
So Valda, this is such a cute little dog, Charlie. Tell me about Charlie's breed.
Well, Charlie doesn't really have a breed that I'm aware of. Charlie is a rescue dog. I got him when he was 18 months old, and he was prior to me meeting Ian, so I'd take him walking of a morning, always on a lead, and if ever he escaped from the yard, he was off, and I had to collect him in the car. He and Sizzle are inseparable. In fact, this one is probably a better guard dog than Sizzle. If he senses danger at all, he'll give a bit of a growl, whereas the big friendly Sizzle is less inclined to do so. But this one normally has the ears going and he will growl. But any kind of animal can be outside the motorhome, as we've had on many occasions. There'll be horses when we open the window, and the dogs do not make a noise at all. Neither dog is a yappy dog. They don't bark for any reason. Even when other dogs bark at them, they are silent. So they don't make a noise when they don't have to. But I can see my husband playing with the toy. There's a little bit of a story to go with that. Those of you who are thinking, I wouldn't like a dog because I couldn't bear that squeak.
Tell us about the squeaky toy.
Well, of a morning he's got to know, and nothing we've taught him, but he likes to jump up off his bed and up under the bed of a morning, and he comes up and he'll give us, one of us or both of us, a lick, and then he'll sit down and grab the toy and jump up, but he will not squeak this toy till such times as that my wife has a cup of coffee.
I think that's awesome. You know, dogs take their cue from us. They study our human language very well, and he knows. He's also a great talker. If you've ever been with Sizzle like we have and it's nearly dinner time, he will just do this low talk until somebody gets the idea. Not your high-pitched one, but a very low one. And he loves to communicate. He's a great communicator. So as you can see, these dogs are very socialised, very well trained too, and they look after each other when they're out and about.
And us. They
look
take
after
care,
you.
Yes, they take care of us. And it's very reassuring. If you go into a situation, sometimes I think everybody find themselves in these situations at different times. You think, well, should I stop or not? But while you've got the dogs, the situation is you feel very much in control.
Now we know when we go camping that most of us take various types of human camping food to make our life easier, depending on what cooking appliances we have. What would you do to take food along for your two fur babies?
Well, I guess I'll hand that over to my wife. She's a domestic engineer and she feeds me well.
Domestic engineer, I like that. That's awesome.
She looks after me pretty well.
Can I just add too that Valda and Ian have a blended family. They have remarried after being widowed, and each of them owned one of these dogs. So these two dogs have come together when Ian and Valda got married as a blended family. I think it's awesome. Dogs will just naturally know who's in their family, who they belong to, and who their wolf pack is, basically. So tell me about the food.
Usually I go and I buy a packet of chicken necks, and Charlie's diet is 3 chicken necks an evening. Sizzle gets 3 chicken wings. If we're travelling, I like to get bones, and if I put a bone out for each of them of an evening, they're very good. They'll swap bones, but then of an evening I'll pick it up again and put it back in the fridge, wrap it up, and the next evening pop it out again until I think that bone is dead. Other than that, they will eat our leftovers, which they like to do. They've now adapted to yogurt, but I don't normally cook any dog food for them. I do at home, but when we're travelling, I don't. I notice when we're travelling, both dogs eat more grass, even though neither of them ever do any business inside the motorhome. On very rare occasions, the little one in the middle of the night has decided to go out. Sizzle has obviously a camel's bladder. He can stay in the motorhome, the pair of them, even though the door is open, he will not go out until he's given permission to do so. And sometimes it can be 11 a.m. before he goes out and relieves himself. And both of them need to go out, obviously. And the little one's very, very respectful of the environment. He'll go out under a bush. The big one will do it wherever he wants to.
So here in Australia, we must pick up after our dogs, as I imagine you do in many other countries. And so we carry pooper scooper bags, and we simply dispose of them when we find another rubbish bin. So we always look after our dogs and we clean up after them. What about water? The logistics of carrying water, enough water for your dogs?
Well, we always have water available.
Now, Valda told me a funny story about Sizzle the other night, and this is a great story about how great these dogs can communicate with you. Tell us about the water.
Well, Ian had come home and I was a bit later, and I came in and I poured myself a drink, and Sizzle barked much as he's doing now. And then I poured myself another drink, turned on the tap, and he knows the sound of the water. And he barked again, and as one does when he talks to one's dog. And I said, "What's the matter, Sizzle?" And then I thought, the tap. And sure enough, the water bowl was empty. So I filled it up, and to make it worth my while, he basically drank the bowl. And then Sizzle was happy, so Charlie had a drink.
So he told you he was thirsty, he saw the water running. I love the intelligence of dogs. I think we totally underestimate them.
Absolutely.
We certainly
Roland,
The other thing is that in Australia, our dogs must always be on a lead. Our two dogs are usually joined together with one lead, and so I only have to hold one leash, I suppose.
I've done that when I've had two dogs. It's great, isn't it? The one leash and then the two little attachments to that one. It's
Absolutely.
good, isn't it?
And because Sizzle initially, because Charlie was the rescue dog, Sizzle initially was more responsive to instructions. Now, when we take them walking, Charlie is very much the boss. Even though he's smaller, he will pull and walk themselves.
I think dogs do have to have that freedom of choice. I totally agree. And I have to laugh at a story that Valda told me once. When she was travelling with her motorhome and there was a sign that said, no dogs. And I was travelling behind her and I rang her and I said, this sign up there says no dogs, Valda. And she said, oh, that's fine. My dogs can't read. And we laughed and we laughed. And honestly, it was one of the funniest things. So we went a bit further down the road and we found a spot where dogs were allowed. But we did laugh about that, didn't we, for quite some time. Our dogs can't read. If you're going to be camping outdoors and you're camping with a tent, then you've got a whole different set of circumstances. Maybe you want to pack a coat for your dog, maybe a little rain jacket, perhaps pack a dog bed that's a waterproof one so that your dog can sleep with you inside the tent. And always make sure that you have contact details, like on Roland's collar here. We have name, we have phone number, he's microchipped. Make sure your microchip details are all up to date. We recently changed homes and I've got to make that phone call to the microchip registration people and change my home address. That's really important so that your dog can be reunited with you, just in case they get lost in the great outdoors, which does happen. So, Valda, how long have you been travelling with dogs?
4 years.
4 years. Ian, would you ever go travelling in this motorhome without your dogs?
I can't imagine it, Chris. I really cannot imagine it.
Have there been any situations where you thought, I should have left the dogs at home?
Not one.
Not one.
Not one. Because they've been great companions, security. They are just one of us, so to speak, although they can't talk our language. They certainly do communicate with us.
And we talked about, and you brought up a very good point, we talked about recognising the different barks that your dog give you.
Yes.
So Sizzle would alert you for water, for example, so you knew that with the type of bark that he was actually asking you something.
Yes.
Charlie would bark to warn you of something. That's a different bark again.
Somebody knocks on the door. It's a warning, you know, that security thing. What are you doing here? They're alerting us to a situation. They don't know who's out the other side of the door, so we deal with that situation and then give them direction. It's all right. But we've never had a situation that been any stage threatening to us. But I guess they've created that situation because I know that if you hear a barking dog, well, I certainly wouldn't go.
I think that is a very good security question.
And it does. It gives us a lot of security. We could camp in the most hostile environment and have no worries.
The other thing about the barking is we don't ever chastise them for barking, because in the instance of Sizzle wanting water, he didn't bark continuously, he just gave the one bark. We found that any time they bark, there's some reason for it, and we always say good boy, and then they usually settle down. And then somebody comes to the door. The other night again, I was late, and they both barked when they heard me outside.
Here in Australia, we have a lot of freedom camping spots that are where dogs are allowed, and we usually gravitate to those spots. Those of us that have dogs that we travel with, we know the camps that allow dogs and the camps that don't. National parks, I suppose, are areas where we don't take our dogs because of security for other animals and for them as well. So check in your own country where you're allowed to take your dogs and abide by the rules of your country. The rules are there for a reason. Another question that you might be asking is, what do you do with dogs when it's wet weather? We have a big dog and a small dog. Let's put that question to Valda.
Well, we had that happening to us on this journey. We had 3 days of constant rain, and obviously the dogs still need to go out and have a run in the fresh air. Sadly, we don't go out and have a run, but the dogs go out, and they've now learned to just, when they come inside, I'll wipe their feet, dry their feet, and they're very happy. I don't worry too much about their wet coats. As you can see, Charlie has a long coat, Sizzle has a shorter one, but they seem to know that this is the drill because we remove the carpet from the motorhome, I guess for that reason. If you're going to take dogs, you have to make a few changes, and that's one of them. I would prefer to have carpet. We have rugs on the floor, which the dogs fill up with hair, but they are easily shaken out each day.
So there's the question answered on what do you do with your dog in wet weather. Valda, when you go out of an evening and the dogs need to stay in the motorhome for a short time, how do you keep them calm and stop them from missing you and maybe getting upset? What do you do for your dogs?
Well, many years ago, probably 3 years ago, Sizzle had an accident and he was unable to walk for quite a number of weeks. So I would carry him where I was and I would put a blanket on the couch and he would watch television. He has now become a television addict. So when we go out of an evening, I try and find a channel that may not have too much violence because he really does watch it, and if there's a bit of violence he does bark. So I turn on the television and if we try and get him to come up this way, he looks back at the TV. So Sizzle, what would you like to read?
That's the gift.
The eyes going back to it.
But this person came to this actress came.
Good boys. We go for a walk. So look at Chris. Oh yes. Hello. Come on. Yes, walk. Come on, walk. Yes.
So this video today we hope has showed you some insights on how to live, have fun with and travel with your dog in a camper van. Thanks for watching Cooking for Dogs today. We hope you enjoyed this little insight into how easy it is to travel with dogs and how much fun it is. And thanks to Valda and Ian for sharing their stories with us today.
Sure.
And Sizzle and Charlie and Roland by default because he's been sitting on my knee. If you like our channel, please do subscribe to Cooking for Dogs. Check us out on Facebook. We have other social media sites. We have a dog blog site called cookingfordogs.com. But above all, thanks for watching and bon appetit.